In the second of my Scenics Made Easy videos, I'm going to show you how to make an embankment from scratch. Now, the stuff I use is the Cellutex insulation foam, which is foil covered on each side, which can be easily peeled off. It comes in large sheets and varying thicknesses. My one's a 55mm thickness, and you get it from, B&Q, Wicks, etc. So your kind of DIY stores. What I tend to do when I'm building up a scene, in this case the embankment, is you'll see that I've laid 4 kind of brick shapes of the Cellutex insulation in position. Now, if I take these out of the way to kind of show you, the embankment will go round towards the entrance to the tunnels under this S&T facility, round to here, and I've just cut it into 4 blocks, and then I've angled each part so it kind of fits together like a paving stone type design. You'd cut them to fit, and there they all kind of fit there. Obviously they're not been fitted in properly. I've just laid them on top of the actual shape where the embankment will go. What I use to cut this is a plasterboard knife, and you'll get them from, I got this one from Screwfix. It's a vicious looking thing, but it cuts through this stuff with ease. Okay, so you can get them from any DIY store, but I got this one from Screwfix for about £4 or something. Another thing you need to bear in mind when you're using any Cellutex or any fibrous material is, if you're going to be cutting it, wear a mask, and if you're going to be handling it, wear some protection. You will get fine fibres that spike into your fingers when you start to shape it, cut it, and even scooping up the offcuts. Watch what you're doing. These rubber gloves will protect to a point. I don't want to put heavy duty gloves on because you lose the feel and the dexterity when you're actually shaping it, but just be careful what you're doing. If you're suffering from any respiratory problems, I would definitely wear a respiratory mask. What you'll see I've done now is I've taken the foam and I've cut it into shape to fit the kind of curve, just roughly. It doesn't have to be too neat because you're going to obviously put plaster cloth on top and carve this before then anyway. Just cut different layers just to take it up to the level of the baseboard, and you see I've kind of cut it around there. What really needs to be done now needs to be fixed down, and for that I'm going to use foam tack glue from Woodland Scenics. And once that's dried, basically, it's then onto the carving stage. So I'm going to get the glue and I'm going to fix this down. When you're ready, what I've done is I've taken the foil off the tops and the bottoms of the main blocks there, just so it adheres better to the foam above it and the baseboard below it. And I'm just going to use this foam tack glue here, and the code for that is ST1444, and just squirt a bit onto the baseboard, and I'm just going to spread it out. It doesn't have to be evenly spread because you're going to put weight on the foam, and it's going to obviously make it ooze out in different directions to cover the main area that it's needing. So I'm going to put a bit more down there. This dries clear, so don't worry about leaving white marks, but then again everything's going to be covered with your plaster cloth and Scenic material. Some more in there. Foam tack glue's reasonably priced. Don't go mad and waste it though. Now I'm not really needing to go to the very, very, very edge of the track because the embankment doesn't go all the way into the cess. If I give it a good coverage, I can always scrape up the foam later and chisel it away if I don't need it. So there we go. Okay, now I'm going to put these down now, these 2 bits of foam. Put that there just now, and I'm positioning that one first. Give it a squash down, and then the same with the one at the side. Should all then fit into place, and then really what you want to do is you want to put weight on that. That's me fitted the foam in position now with the glue. What I'm going to do to hold it down is put some weights on it, but also what I find handy is using these foam nails from Woodland Scenics. I bought a pack, 75 in it, and I've used them on, you know, previous projects when I'm doing foam terrain. You can obviously pull them out after the foam's dry and use them again. So I'm just going to poke a couple in the top. It just helps attach the two bits of foam while the glue's going off. You'll notice on some of these I've not taken the foil off the top. I'll do that later. It's as long as the foil is removed where the glue is, because I don't know how well the glue will work with the foil. So I'm just going to pop them in all the way around. Use as many as you like, and you can pull them out obviously when the glue is dry. And it's a simple case of popping some weights on it all the way around to ensure that the glue binds to both bits of foam and to the baseboard. As you can see now, I've removed the pins and the rest of the foil from the top of the foam. It's now firmly glued and locked in place, and it's now ready to be shaped. What I use to shape them is some Surform files. I've got a small one there, and then a larger kind of shaver. And I've used these on my previous landscaping parts at the building site and the caravan park area. I just got these in B&Q. I think they're Stanley. Yep, they're made by Stanley. So, you know, they're readily available in DIY shops. And I think that eats through the foam the most effectively. Okay, I'm just going to start off by taking the edge off the foam. I'm not going to go right to my finishing position because I've got obviously to carve it and shape it with the Surforms. Just sawing action to remove. And that'll do just now for the rough shape, and I'll continue my way round the curve. What I've started to do now is remove some of the excess and start to shape the embankment using the Surform file. Try to use your imagination in shaping it, and also don't make it too steep. Try and get it so obviously grass could grow on the entire embankment, if that's the desired outcome you want, which is the case with me. I'm going to hoover that up and have a look and see what I think. As you can see, I've now carved the embankment into shape, and I'm happy with the shape of it all the way around from this side of the layout to the station side. I've then covered the area in polythene sheeting because I'm going to do the plaster clothing next, which can get a bit messy. And what I've done, if you see here, the embankment goes right up against the wall. I've forced polythene sheet down to cover the wall, and then after the plaster cloth is dried, I'll carefully slide that out, or even just cut it off and poke it down. That's a kind of wee tip just to keep the plaster cloth off your structures, brickwork, card models, etc. You might also be able to see here that my wall has been fixed in place and the embankment carved into that top of the wall from the top of the base board on the upper section here. I've then taken yellow masking tape and masked off the top section of the wall and put paper down as well, and that covers the wall. And then what I'm going to do finally is take some polythene sheeting and actually mask it onto the top of the wall, just to stop any plaster cloth going onto the actual brickwork. What I've done is I've cut the plaster cloth that you get in rolls. You can get it from various manufacturers. This is from Woodland Scenics, and I've cut it in different size strips that I might need to, do the whole of the embankment. It has to be kind of sealed at the top and can seal into the baseboard at the bottom to give it a nice shell. And so I've cut it into these bits, and it's a case of dipping it in the water, running it kind of through a basin of, it says cold water, but I tend to go for kind of lukewarm. Okay, just kind of dip it in. Also covered plaster clothing in an earlier video. If you click on the link at the top of the screen now, it will direct you to that. Then you bring it across to the position you want. Textured side, it's got a slightly more textured side than the bottom, so you just kind of position it where you want. Okay, make sure there's nothing in the way, and then just massage and push it so that the holes, impregnated holes in the cloth, kind of blend in with the plaster covering it, and the plaster obviously will go through then and it'll adhere to the surfaces below. Okay, so it's a case of just building up. Now it says you to overlap it per piece, and I would recommend that as well. So I'll use, for example, this thinner bit to overlap it slightly and then onto the bottom. And then I'll build a strip along the top there to seal it in to the top of the wooden upper board and the foam. If it's not 100% neat here with the edges, it doesn't matter. It's going to be covered in static grass, bushes, etc., and it's going to blend in with the border of your building site or your construction site or your industrial estate. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't have to blend. It doesn't have to be a perfectly neat edge. Okay. So a case of just keeping going, taking your plaster cloth that's impregnated with the plaster. If you break your arm, you go to A&E. You have to get a plaster cast on, and this is what they'll use. So it does dry rock hard. I'm trying to overlap that on the bottom a little bit. If it gets creased, you can always peel it off. Somebody needs a new exhaust. And then in there like so. Okay, and I'm trying to get the holes all to be sealed. I've got a massive pile of cut strips, so I don't have to stop halfway through and start cutting new bits, because obviously your fingers and that'll be wet. I'm just wearing gloves because I can't be bothered picking plaster from underneath my nails for hours. Again, overlapping. Don't have to be 100% accurate and neat, because when you smooth it out, it tends to smooth the joins anyway if it's a bit ruffled at the corners. If there are any gaps in these, I've got a little gap here for example, it should cover it and it will not be a problem. If it does sink, you just get some filler. You get plaster filler, or you could just use polyfiller, but we'll get to that in the next stage after this is dried. So I'm just going to continue doing this just now, and I'll come back and show you the finished job. That's the plaster cloth now in place with all the sheets removed, and it's a case of waiting 2, 3, maybe 4 days for that to fully harden and dry before I can add on a painted base coat. That's been 3 days since the plaster was put down, and as you can hear now, it's dry and it's hardened. I went round the whole of the embankment, and if there's any areas that maybe didn't look quite right, I've just got the shaper sheet plaster from Woodland Scenics, and I've kind of filled areas where I wasn't quite happy, and you're able to see that. And also around the area, if I take the camera toward the join between the plaster and the wall, I just filled that in very neatly down the side there. So it's now ready to receive its base coat of paint. You could use Woodland Scenics earth colours, which I have done on previous occasions, but I tend to find those were quite expensive for the coverage that you got, and you had to go over bare plaster 2 or 3 times to really get rid of the white colour. You could also use green scene texture paint, which is excellent, which I will use. But for a quick base coat, just to get rid of the white completely, I've just gone and got myself a tester pot matte emulsion, and this particular one's from B&Q and it's Mocha Velvet. It's just a brownish colour, just to give it a coat, and then I'll go over bits and pieces with the texture paint from Green Scene, because obviously that's a bit more expensive. Bearing in mind the majority of this area will be covered in static grass, and there will be fine turf scatters that I put down as well, so you will probably see next to nothing of the base coat. It's just to take the whiteness away. Okay, that's the embankment now been painted. First I used the mocha coloured emulsion, and then what I did is I went over the covering of that with some Green Scene texture paint, Yard Filth. That's quite a nice pasty, like gravelly paint, and it gives a bit of texture, and it's a bit more realistic in colour, if I'm being honest. Most of this will eventually be covered anyway, but some parts will be deliberately left bare to show bare ground in that on the steeper faces of the embankment. So now it's a case of letting that dry, and then we're looking at building up the base coats of Scenic material. With the paint now dry, I'm now looking to put on my first layer of Scenic material, and this will form the base of greenery, to then build on top of that the static grasses, the underbrush, the bushes, the foliage, and basically the finishing touches to the actual embankment. What I use for this is a series of fine turfs and coarse turfs to give a variation in tone and in level, if you like. I don't want it being too dimensional. So I'll start off with putting some fine turf soil and earth down, and maybe some blended turf and burnt grass fine turf, and then I'll move on to the coarser turf, which is burnt grass and light green. And the ballast at the left of the screen there is just to blend in the edge of the track with the Scenic material, so there's not a clinical clean edge to, if you like, to the ballast shoulder. On top of the texture paint, I'm going to add PVA. I've not watered this down, it's totally neat, and I'm basically going to coat the area where I want the Scenic material to adhere to, which is pretty much, I'd say, 90% of the embankment. Remember, the texture paint and all the brown paints that I put down were just to cover the actual plaster cloth. I don't want any white showing. There's nothing worse than seeing a nice layout and you then see a partially painted plaster cloth embankment with the white showing through. I've done it myself when I used to build layouts when I was young, and I thought, well, that just looks hideous, so I do try my best to get it covered. Not always easy, I have to say, you do tend to miss bits, but I learn from my earlier mistakes. So I'm just going to continue coating this embankment. Be quite generous with the coating on the more severe slopes, if you like. It encourages the material to stick a bit better. Okay, that's the embankment now covered in the PVA, and what I'll try and do is I'll try and avoid getting too much onto the tracks. I can always hoover it up, or the Scenic material, but why give yourself extra hassle? Right, first of all I'll go in with some fine soil through the sprinkler. I'll just liberally kind of get that coating. Don't worry if it goes on the ballast shoulder, it's just easily hoovered up. It's not got glue on it, remember. The beauty about using this shaker from the bottle is that it gives a nicer spread. If you want it more spread, just lift the shaker further away from the surface and it'll spread out a bit better as it comes down. Okay, that's it now coated in the turf, earth burnt grass and the blended turf scatter. It's been given a liberal coating so there's no white glue showing through. Don't worry if there is, it dries clear anyway, and remember you've got your brown base coat with the paint to, you know, prevent any unsightly white bits of plaster showing through, so it's not a problem. If at any time you think, oh, there's too much brown and there's too much green there, just get another scatter and go over the top of it. This is quite a thick dressing, if you like, of the scatter, and not all of it will adhere with the PVA, but don't worry, the next phase will take care of that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some coarser turf to give it that low level ground weed texture. Now what you'll find is if you use the coarse turf straight from the actual sprinkler, if you like, it's pretty rubbish. It doesn't come out particularly well. However, that's okay for a very light coating. I'll show you what I mean. It tends to stick together in the tub, so you've kind of got to agitate it a little bit. And because it's a slope, a lot of it will flow its way to the bottom because it's quite spongy. So I'm going to take the lid off here and just give it a, and then just try. And if you put too much of this on, just pick it up. I'm just going to put it around the top. I'm going to work my way around there doing all this, and don't worry about stuff that falls on the bottom, we'll pick that up later. Right, that's the coarse turf added, and you realise that the coarse turf will not adhere to the top of the fine scatters, because the scatters are the ones that are soaking up the glue. So what I'll do to seal this in place, I will use some Woodland Scenics spray Scenic cement, and I'll basically saturate the place, and it will not only assist the PVA with the fine scatter, but it'll also hold down the coarse turf as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little time for the PVA base glue to kind of start to grab the scatter before I go on and do the Scenic cement stuff. I'll just take a quick fly around this part. As you can see there, different tones of brown, green, and all the way around to where I've cut it into the walling. At the final stage of locking the Scenic material in place, what I've used is the Scenic cement. Now, you can use the spray for large areas, but if you've got an intricate area next to a wall or a structure, you don't want obviously the Scenic cement on. By the way, it's actually water soluble, so you'll be able to wash it off to a certain degree, but you don't want it getting into the brick course of a retaining wall or whatever. So I apply it in these intricate areas like I've done here with a small pipette, and because obviously it's got a wetting agent in it, it will flow. You don't have to wet the surface or dampen the surface which you apply it to prior to actually putting it on. Before I go on to the stage of adding static grass and the next layer of Scenic material, what I do is I get all the accessories or the additional parts that I want, and I place them on the layout. For example, in front of you here you've got a disused pallet, some old sleepers piled up, and I've got some rusty rails sitting in the middle of the tracks there. I'll fix them down with some rocket adhesive just to fix them to the base layer of Scenic material before I then add the static grass, because it then allows you to have the static grass growing up and around it, and looks like it was there before the grass grew. So that's the order I would do it in. Now, if I move the camera across here, some of the items I've got on this occasion to put on the embankment near the station where things have been tossed over the wall by motorists and pedestrians. I've got old tyres here, these are from Scale Model Scenery, and I've got some Backman Scenecraft road sign that I've broken off its stand, and two traffic cones which I've all weathered up with Humbrol weathering powders and sealed in place with a matte varnish to give the dirty, been lying in a exposed area, undergrowth for a while and got a bit worn and weather beaten. So I'll put them on the scene before I start with the static grass. What I've done now is I've coated the area that I want the static grass to adhere to in PVA. It's not watered down, it's just straight from the tub. I've just applied it with a small brush. Now obviously the static grass is going to fall on the whole area, but when the stuff's not got glue on it, that'll be easy to vacuum up. Before I start the static grass, I've got to provide a ground for the static applicator, and what I just use is these small O-head nails, and I'll just push them into the terrain, and I put them every maybe, I don't know, 12 inches, 300mm, just so it allows me to move the cable round without working over the static grasses that I'm going to use are a mixture of 6 and 6.5mm in early fall, late fall, and some straw. And the main body of it is made up from the miniature stuff from Silver, and I get that online. I'll put the link to the website underneath in the description. And I've just mixed 2 or 3 different tones up there to give it a variation. You don't want the same tone throughout the whole embankment, but at the moment I'll start with the 6 and 6.5. Take my notch applicator, medium hole setting, and fill it at least 2/3. Now have a hoover ready because this will go everywhere. So I'm quite happy with that. You can see in there the different tones, and if it balls up, don't worry about that, because as you shake the applicator that'll all become detached and flow out no problem. That's me now ready to apply the static grass. I've got my crocodile clip grounded there on the nail, and I've covered the area in paper. The good thing about using paper is you can have all the excess static grass on it, just pick up the paper and basically feed it straight back into the tub, so there's no waste, or minimal waste. So I'll put it at ground level so you can maybe see the actual application of static grass at a decent angle. Right, put the applicator on, and it's a case of over the surface and shaking. You'll be able to see the static grass coming down there and sticking up when it hits the PVA. Depending on how thick you want it, obviously how much you go over it, it's entirely up to you. But I'll work my way around this section, try and keep it maybe an inch, inch and a half from the surface, so the static is retained when the grass hits the glue. That's the static grasses now in position, and I've gone over the area with a vacuum attachment with a kind of bit of tights, small kind of silk sock fixed over the end, and that allows me to pick off the excess and put it back in the tub so there's not a lot of waste. Then after that I go over with the open nozzle and take all the excess off the tracks and the baseboard that I don't need, and it's maybe been mixed in with ballast and coarse turf that I don't want. So I've tried to reclaim as much as I can of the unused static grass. It's now a case of letting that dry and then adding in anything else. Might want to add another layer of the grass in, or I might want to add some bushes, fine leaf foliage, and the finishing touches. The final stage in the landscaping of the embankment is to add the bushes, the undergrowth, and any trees that you want to put on. Now, for this I use 3 different varied types of foliage. First of all, we've got the fine leaf foliage from Woodland Scenics. Now this particular one is the light green. They've got olive green and they've got dead mix as well. Another go-to for me is the Woodland Scenics bushes and the underbrush, the foamy material that gives convincing bushes and low-lying shrubs on any part of the layout really. And the third one, which is new for the embankment, has been the horsehair that I've manipulated, snipped, painted and then dipped in coarse turf, or in this case Gauge Master leaves, and you can also dip them in any fine leaf foliage or turf mixes to give varying tones. The reason why I chose to do some of the horsehair ones are purely down to a bit of variety and cost. I got an A5 sheet of horsehair for about £1.75, and I've managed to make well over a dozen bushes like this in different shapes, tones and shades for under a £5, whereas a single box of this fine leaf foliage will cost you about £18, and these will cost you about £9, £10 as well. So whilst you get a lot from your underbrush and your bushes, you don't get so much from your fine leaf foliage, but you can get unlimited bushes from horsehair by manipulating and cutting it. I've done a video on how to make horsehair bushes, the link's at the top of the screen if you want to check that out. When you take the fine leaf foliage out of the box, it tends to come out in clumps, which is, you know, not really much use. So you just rip and manipulate to get bushes that you think would suit that particular area on your landscape. And it's really simple. There in front of you I've got a selection of bushes that need just to be a bit of clipping and trimming to stick on the top of the static grass or the bare ground to finish the scene. If you want to put bushes on top of the static grass, it's pretty much the same as, you know, without the static grass. PVA goes on it. The actual grass acts as a kind of gripper as well for some of the bushes, whether it be underbrush or bushes from Woodland Scenics or your horsehair bushes. And you just put the glue down and then take your bush material, press it into position. It's all about using your imagination. You don't want perfectly round bushes, try and get them random sprawling shapes. This is the underbrush, which is basically the same as the bush but in smaller pieces, and it allows a more, shall we say, less dense bush. So there I am there, and for this one I think I'll use the same actually. I'll stay with the light green. Now don't worry about the pieces of underbrush falling off, because what you do before you leave it is you give it a scoosh of Scenic cement, and what happens, that absorbs into the sponge, and when it hardens they all bind together. There we go. Happy with that just now. Remember, any white glue showing, not a problem, it dries clear. You'll have noticed as I've worked my way around, I've added in some trees. These are just seafoam trees. The video on how I did that is at the top of the screen, and I've tried to work in that they're small kind of copses of trees. And don't just have one tree in the middle of an entire embankment on its own, it might look a wee bit out of place. So I've kind of clumped them together in groups of 2, 3, 4. And it's a case of just using your drill, drilling into the plaster cloth, which is really, really easy, and then taking the tree, positioning it, and then taking a bit of super glue. You could use PVA for this, but the benefit of using rocket or some fast acting glue is you get the tree in position and it stays, because sometimes the hole's a bit big and the tree wobbles about a bit. So I'm just going to place it in, push it into position, make sure it's kind of standing straight and not bent over, and hold it for the period of time which takes the glue to kind of bond, and you'll have it done. Easy. I hope you found the video useful and quite easy to follow. If you have any questions on what you've seen, please do get in touch and I'll try my best to help you. Cheers just now.